my daughter Isabella is 17 years old. She's just turned 17. At 8 weeks old, she, post a vaccine, started having severe seizures. It was initially misdiagnosed as reflux, and after quite a few months, it was correctly diagnosed as epilepsy, and she was having sort of 60, 70 seizures a day. At that time, the doctor said to me that she'll be a vegetable or she'll die before she's one, and I might as well put her in an institution. That was what I was told by the neurologists. Um, we eventually got her seizures under control, and her seizures have turned out to be a genetic epilepsy, which linked to the SCN2A gene. And once we got her on a sodium channel blocker, that controlled the seizures. But by then, obviously a lot of damage had been done, and she was on a cocktail of medicine. So, she had initially been meeting milestones up until about 8 weeks when the seizures started. Whether or not they were precipitated by the vaccine, I don't know. She did have an underlying genetic predisposition, but, she slowly started to lose the milestones that she had achieved and, could do very little. Seizures under control, we started physiotherapy, occupational therapy, all the normal sorts of therapies. And she progressed slowly. She started walking when she was 3 years old. She did go through the milestones somewhat, but obviously very much delayed. And she was progressing very slowly. She was very tense, disengaged, sort of, not really with your present, though there was always, moments where there was spark in her eyes, humor, you could see there was more going on. And I think it was in 2013 or so, a friend of mine recommended that I start Scotsman therapy. And at the time, I thought, oh, it sounds like a huge commitment, 2 hours a day. And, I was very, I wasn't convinced. And, she kept saying to me, you've got a whole lifetime, just try it. And at that time, Linda came to South Africa, took a whole lot of photos of Bella. And, Linda showed me the structural issues in her diaphragm. And, now when I look back at the photos of the sort of scrunched up little girl sitting on a table, she, now she's got the beautiful posture, everything's open and normal, and it just looks looser and freer, not so tight. So we started that with Linda in 2013, 2014, I'm not sure, around about there. And, we saw a lot of steady progress, sort of immediate things we saw was, sleeping through the night, ability to fall asleep, a lot calmer, a lot less stimming. And slowly she started to develop. We always carried on the same therapies that we'd always done, speech, occupational physiotherapy, all the sort of mainstream therapies, which no doubt helped. But the other therapy we did was neurotherapy, neurobiofeedback, which I do think has also helped a lot. But the big shift was once we had started Scotsman therapy. And, now that was 2014. In 2019, we discovered that she had actually taught herself to read. She always used to sit for hours reading magazines or looking at magazines, or so we thought, and she had actually taught herself to read. And obviously, we'd been trying to teach her along the way, but at a very basic level. We had no concept of how much she knew and what was going on. So, almost like a bit of locked-in syndrome, that there was so much going on which we couldn't see because she's nonverbal. Now she uses an iPad to communicate. She can ride a horse, she can swim, she can kick a ball. Far from being a vegetable, someone who should be put in an institution, she's got, a very good quality of life. We still struggle with things, of course, and there's still a long path, but I think I go back to my friend Adi's words at the time when she said, "You've got a whole lifetime." So for me, this is not a race. It's not something you can see from month to month, but if you go back and look at the photographs, it's astounding, but it's a slow, gradual improvement. And then suddenly you look back and the whole structure has changed.
I just remember there was enormous difference in Bella's walking. She was
Yes,
unstable to begin with.
quite unstable. Yes. And now, I mean, you'll see she'll walk up and down stairs with a school bag on her back and hardly touch the wall or anything for support. From a child who was never going to walk, who was walking but with difficulty, you know, to walk up and down stairs carrying a heavy backpack on her back. Um, it's quite something. I went to the neurologist and she was saying, "Oh, we must have a look. I'm sure I must check her back. Maybe she's going to need some surgery. We must check if she's got scoliosis. She's at the age." And then she looked at her back and she said, "Oh, her spine is perfect." I wasn't, wow, but I was, also a bit horrified that that was potentially the path we were going down.
What I also noticed very much with Bella was when I first met her, she didn't seem to have very much typical social recognition. She didn't seem to connect with people. And this
Yes.
changed so beautifully over time.
I know she's very connected now. She's very friendly and connected and sociable, and she will look you straight in the eye and come to you for connection.
And also she has this wonderful vocabulary in her head, but she can reason so well now and express
Yes,
herself quite a profound level. Very
very
beautiful.
profound level. I think the one thing she wrote once was, she wished her body listened to her. Her body doesn't listen to her. So, so she's very aware, and I think um, that's more referring to her fine motor skill difficulties, which are also improving. I remember an occupational therapist saying to me, she'll never be able to point. And now she types with a finger, so she can point perfectly. So these are all the gains that add up over time, and I think will continue to add up.
And what you have mentioned in relation to the physiotherapist and the neurologist is that they believe very deeply that no change can take place. So child comes back after
Absolutely.
a period of time, they already know what to expect. And they
Yes.
and all the things they told you early on, the child will never do, the child won't have done, and deformities will begin to be more and more obvious. And this for them is a fact. So they had not explored or been able to explore any other dimension or paradigm in relation to development. They're very closed to that, and they don't know what to do.
A lot of the other therapies can be quite, um, I don't want to say unpleasant, but not joyful. And I think the nice thing about your therapy, Linda, it's quite peaceful and it's a bonding time and it's between a parent and a child. Whereas, in other therapies, the parent is just an observer and you watch things being done to your child. It's quite a special intervention.